Welcome everybody to the 2021 IT Northeastern District meeting, day 3. My name is Luigi Castanelli, and I'm a traffic engineer for HDR Engineering and part-time YouTuber. This is the last day of our conference and you're in for a special treat. Session number 7, MUTCD, proposed amendment discussion. And before I introduce the speakers, I just want to go through some housekeeping items that I've been looking in the chats. And one of them was, how do I get my PDH credits? You have to fill out those Google forms that have been placed in the chat. For those of you who have registered, please go back to the day 1, day 2 videos, and in the chat, you'll be able to see the links for you to answer the questions and then get your PDHs. Very important that you fill out those forms. So let's get into our last session. We have to get full 1.5 PDH credits, you got to watch the entire session. I will post the Google link to the survey in the chat box like I've done before. And after the presentation, I'm gonna post 3, or I'm gonna mention 3 questions that you folks should all be responding to get your credits. But I also encourage, as the presentation is going on, please type in your questions so we can make it a very interactive Q&A after the presentation. And with that, let me introduce you to your 3 speakers today. And I gotta tell you, you're in for a treat. The 3 speakers are practically, I know 2 of them personally and have worked with them, are an encyclopedia of the MUTCD. And I'll start off with Gordon Meth, expert witness at Robson Forensic, and Lynn Lemunion, County Traffic Engineer, Ocean County Engineering Department. And from what I understand, they consider Randy, our final speaker, Randy McCord, principal at DKS Associates, the encyclopedia of MUTCD. So I'm in for a treat to listen to the discussion. So with that, watch the presentation, and in about an hour and so, we're gonna go to Q&A, and then finally, you're gonna see the last hot seat interviews. And I gotta tell you, you're in for a treat after the Q&A. With that, let's go check out the video.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. This morning, we're going to talk to you about proposed changes to the manual and uniform traffic control devices. We have a pretty distinguished panel with you today. First, we have immediate international ITE president, Randy McCord. Second of all, we have immediate past chair of the Traffic Engineering Council and former IT International board member and all the other levels in between, Lynn Lemunion. And we have myself, the current traffic engineering chair of the Traffic Engineering Council and a current board member of the ITE International Board, Gordon Meth. Now, we're going to walk through the various changes for the manual with you and take it from there. And then we'll entertain questions at the end. So first, a quick disclaimer. This presentation is not comprehensive item by item review. It concentrates on areas of significant change to transportation professionals and is not concentrated on any one specific area of specialization. All the proposed changes are publicly available if you need more details, but we don't promise to have everything in here. So first of all, what is a traffic control device? Anything that communicates with the road user about the condition, direction, information relevant to the travel task as you use the road, specifically signs, pavement markings, and signals. Traffic control device must A, fulfill a need, B, command attention, C, convey a clear, simple meaning, D, command respect from road users, and E, give adequate time for proper response. Lynn and Randy, do you guys want to add anything to this? I'll start with Lynn.
Well, I think that the main thing with the manual and uniform traffic control devices is that it's uniform. So you want all these things fulfilling the need, commanding attention, like all these things. It's a consistent message across the board.
Okay, Randy.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of people confuse traffic control device with measure or countermeasure, such as a speed hump. Speed hump is not a traffic control device, but the marking and the sign that go with it are.
Great point. All right, let's move on. So what is the MUTCD? Manual and uniform traffic control devices. And as Lynn indicated before, uniformity is the key. And she made sure that we put the red text in. So, adopted by 23 Code of Federal Regulations, CFR, Part 655, Subpart F, as a requirement everywhere in the USA. First established in 1930 under a slightly different name. Latest edition is 2009 with 2 revisions added to that. Regulates all traffic control devices in the US on public roads and private roads open to public travel. Now, that's an important point. We're going to get in more detail on that in a minute. Promotes safe and efficient utilization of road system. Concept is to treat same situations the same way to improve road user response and therefore safety. States are permitted to develop their own MUTCD so long as it meets the minimum standard of the MUTCD and is approved within 2 years of the adoption of the MUTCD. Within the MUTCD, items are expressed in these levels. The highest level is standard. That means it's required, mandatory, or prohibited in some way. Guidance, which is recommended but not mandatory practice. Option, which allows for modification to standard or guidance. And support, which is an informational statement that doesn't tell you what to do. It just provides background. The current MUTCD contains 1,100 standard statements, right, Randy?
Yes, you are correct.
You gave me the numbers, so
that's quite a few. It's up about 10-15% from the 2009. The MPA, not the current 2009. The MPA would propose about 1,100. I think it was just under 1,000 in the 2009 manual.
Okay, so we stand corrected. So the process. First of all, the proposed amendment, or if you're in Canada, process. First of all, the notice of proposed amendments published in Federal Register on December 14th, 2020. It contains 647 proposed changes and 15% more standard statements than current. I stand corrected on that first slide that it will be up to 1,100. The current has just under 1,000. Extension of the comment period occurred on February 2nd, 2021, and comments are due by May 14th, 2021. Even though we're recording this in advance, that's the day that this presentation will be broadcast. So, and so far, 7695 comments so far and counting, which is already 4 times the number of comments or entries that the 2009 manual had. So, and comment resolution will follow. So, Lynn, do you have any more detail you want to add on the process?
No, I guess the only thing I wanted to say was just make sure you know that your comments are due by today. Even if you agree with something, that's an important thing because they don't just want a bunch of comments that are complaining about things that changed in the manual. They want to get an idea of who agrees with stuff also. So if you like something, we're going to go through some of the changes. If you like those changes, you could shoot off a comment that, I agree with modifying the warrants, or I agree with this, what they're doing with the speeds. So that's something to keep in mind, and just remember, you have to get them in by today.
Yeah, and you can also just say, we agree with what the National Committee has submitted, or we agree with what ITE has submitted. Both are very supportive of the MPA and offer some constructive comments. And you may just simply, make a simple comment rather than lengthy comment. One thing Gordon was mentioning, literally, I talked to him, I sent him a note, I think on early Monday, and said, gosh, there's like 4,500 comments. And then we checked today and it was, it's moving in on 8,000. It's increasing substantially. There's a ton of comments coming in regarding fuel, the use of the term fuel versus gas, and a ton of comments on the 85th percentile that seem to be attracting a lot of, quote, political type repetitive comments.
All right, thanks. So new compliance dates are part of the new manual. First of all, low clearance signs, 5 years. High profile grade crossing signs, 10 years. traffic signals at or near grade crossings 10 years. And this is from the date of the adoption of the manual. So 5 years after that date or 10 years, there were compliant dates. If no compliance date is specified, then compliance is achieved through systematic upgrading as existing devices wear out and need to be replaced. And the language for that is already in the current manual and is proposed to stay, which says that you have to replace it. And sometimes there are exceptions where replacing one traffic control device in the middle of a whole bunch of others is not appropriate. But an example of how long traffic control devices can last, PennDOT uses a systematic useful life of a traffic sign rather than have to assess retroflectivity of 18 years. So for them, a traffic sign's life is 18 years. That can vary, but the point is that's about the lifespan of a traffic control device. So you could take 20 years to replace everything when a new manual comes out or somewhere around there. MUTCD applies to public and private. There's language within the manual that talks about private road open to public travel. And that is proposed to be changed to site roadways open to public travel to make it a little more explicit and understandable to people about that it's not just an actual road in some private community that's maintained by the private. There's an expanded list of example locations mentioning private or public ownership. There's new definitions within the manual for right-of-way public highway. So it helps clarify what the confines of where things apply. And the definition of right-of-way public highway now includes the full right-of-way, including the sidewalks and other edge areas and shoulder, the rest areas, scenic overlooks, and way stations. And there's a new definition for shoulder that wasn't in the previous manual that really helps clarify what specific elements of the roadway are. Lynn, anything to add to this section? And then I'll go to Randy.
No.
Randy, anything?
The only thing I would say is that particularly for site roadways open to public travel, the reason it's site roadways, not private, is that a city or a county or a port or a transit district may own land and they may have a circulation roadway, and it's not a private road, it's actually public land. So site roadway is a more descriptive term for that, and that's picked up in this manual. The other is these usually are slower roads, and so there have been some modifications made to address the issue. There were concerns about private property owners having to put up gargantuan signs, and there's criteria now that allows them to go to smaller or minimum size signs that are consistent and within the context of private right-of-way.
Very good. Now, Randy, I know this definition of private road open to public travel has been in existence. Well, I guess it was first put in the Federal Register in 2006 and adopted in 2007. Who's responsible for telling private property owners that MUTCD applies?
It's almost the same thing with the MUTCD in general. So the MUTCD in general for a public agency, they could ignore it if they wish, but federal money associated with their roads would be withheld if they did not follow it. So there's there's a little bit of carrot and stick attached with it. But probably the more important aspect is that when you look at liability, the standard of care is defined by the manual. And so as a private property owner with a roadway, if you're not within the standard of care, you're taking on a lot of responsibility and potential liability. And so it's in your best interest, although you don't have to, but if you do get sued and you didn't follow the manual, there is a good chance you're going to lose, and it could be very expensive for you. And so there's those, when you think about a sign installation of a few $100s to follow the manual versus spend the same amount of money and not follow the manual, why would you not do that?
Right. I mean, because on private property, I see all kinds of things that purport to be traffic signs, and I see all kinds of colors and shapes of things that purport to be crosswalks and other things. But
that's where FHW back in 2006, when this came out, frankly, the thing that probably drove them the most was there were several examples of green and purple stop signs. And I think folks had just, on private property and shopping centers and major event centers or whatever, and The problem is it might feel fun, it may be good architectural, it might be aesthetic, but if somebody gets hurt at the end of the day because they didn't recognize what the right traffic control was, that's our responsibility. And frankly, for private right-of-way, the other place where it applies is in development review with a local agency, is that they can basically, in your development review, when you're looking at the site, if the site circulation roadways are using goofy signs, or they show that you may not get your approval until you conform.
Very good. All right. So the major emphasis areas of the changes from the manual: edge and lane line pavement marking widths, speed limit setting, crosswalk markings, pavement colors, revised stop, yields, and always stop sign applications, and guidance and warrants, volume/functional classifications for horizontal curves. And the manual has added a whole lot of elements regarding multimodal travel: bicycles, automated vehicles, transit, and pedestrians. So we're going to tackle each of these topics one at a time. But this is just kind of the roadmap of the areas where the changes are strongest. But before that, actually, there's one important thing which is in the current manual and is not a change, and really it's about engineering study emphasis. The decision to establish a multi-way stop or traffic signal control at an intersection is based on an engineering study. Numerical warrants are part of the study, not the only criteria. And setting speed limits requires an engineering study. There are expanded factors proposed. Lynn, do you want to add a bit more about this?
Right. So one thing I noticed when I started working for the county was everyone thinks, oh, well, it didn't meet one of the warrants, we can't put a signal here, or it only met the peak hour warrant, we can't put a signal here. But then when you reviewed it, even though, you know, you didn't have enough volume to meet the crash warrant, maybe you had enough crashes, and maybe you had some sight distance issues, or you had, you had consistent issues at the intersection that a signal would really help. People didn't realize that in the manual, it actually says that you can use your engineering judgment to determine whether a signal is warranted or not. And I think I had to write a whole memo about it because, we wanted to have it on the record. And I think that the folks down at FHWA realize that maybe people aren't latching on to this. And so they're doing an emphasis of it. And even though it was already in there, but they want people to know that you should be using an engineering study. It's not just supposed to be a cookbook where you say, okay, number one was met, I get a signal. Number one was not met, I don't get a signal. It's supposed to be an engineering study. So that's something that I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of.
Yeah, if they want to do that, check the list thing. I don't know if anybody's seen Mitchell versus the Machines, but you can be the robots. You won't have a job if you're just checking the box. The reason for engineering judgment is that context, characteristics, and users play a key role in safe and appropriate application of traffic control devices. And so that judgment belongs to the engineering study.
Okay. Lane and edge line widths. Due to both automated driving systems and safety research into human factors, there's a proposal to widen lane and edge lines. The proposed normal widths are as follows: 6-inch wide for freeways, 6-inch wide where speed limit is greater than 40 miles per hour. And emphasize, this is in the current MPA. There's several proposed changes that people have proposed that are different. And 4 to 6-inch wide for all other roadways. The current width out there is 4 inches, just for reference sake. The proposed wide lines in the manual are proposed to be 8 inches where 4 to 5 inches are the normal line widths, and 10 inches where 6-inch normal line widths would be in place. ITE has expressed concerns within a letter about the cost implications that haven't been assessed of implementing these edge lines, particularly when we're talking about roads that are 40 to 50 miles an hour. Given that there's no standard for assessing the conditional lane markings, wider edge lines would last longer, as there's 50% more material to wear away versus a 4-inch edge line. At least 30 states have policies right now for the use of 5 to 6-inch wide edge lines already. And the Highway Safety Manual research has found that 6-inch edge lines reduce fatal and injury crashes by, these are some very exact numbers, but 15.4% to 37.7% versus 4-inch edge lines. So, Randy, I'll go to you for comments first because I know you've been pretty close to this item.
Yeah, there's a lot of concerns, and some people were placing this quote, the burden of going up from 4 to 6 on automated vehicles. And the recommendation in the automated vehicles and the proposals that the National Committee forwarded are to change all of that to support. The actual fundamental research that Gordon references to going to 6 is a fact. There's research out there that shows the wider lanes in certain applications have significant safety benefits. But why would people be concerned about, going away from 4-inch lines, from 4-inch lines and having to go up to 6? Well, a lot of smaller states have a lot of rural inventory of a lot of roads, and they have fixed budgets. And so they're very concerned about this. And that's what ITE was voicing as a concern. On the other side, this doesn't affect local, straight, urban situations on arterials, as I think Gordon has noted, that the requirements were for freeways and for high-speed facilities, not for the vast majority of local roads, neighborhood roads, collectors, and many arterials.
I'd just like to add that 70% of the roads in this country are rural, classified as rural. So this is a lot of roads. There's a lot of mileage out there. And usually rural roads are often characterized by statewide speed limits, which means that they're 50 to 75 miles an hour speed limits on those roads. Speed limit sign. So there's a whole difference between the current and proposed. There's a lot of changes. So first of all, oh, by the way, that 24 mile per hour speed limit sign, which I did find at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville, is not legit. Everything's got to be in 5 mile an hour increments or 10 kilometer per hour increments. So engineering studies are in the current manual are required. The proposed will still require an engineering study. Speed distribution in a study is required in the current manual when you're setting speed limits. Whereas the speed distribution study is recommended, not required. Recommended that speed be within 5 miles per hour of the 85th percentile speed, whereas in the proposed, the 85th percentile speed is only recommended for freeways, expressways, and rural arterials, of which 70% of our roads fall under that category. Factors in the engineering studies are optional in the current manual, whereas in the proposed manual, expanded factors included in engineering studies are recommended, not optional. So the expanded factors that we see: speed distribution, crash experience, road characteristics such as lane width, shoulder conditions, sight distance, grade, alignment, median type, road context, and that's bolded because context is really important, roadside development environment, functional classification, curbside uses, and activity, pedestrian activity, bicycle activity. I know that several people have commented that we could do more on those last two items in terms of language. So some of the history of speed limit settings or recommendations. The 1948 edition of the manual first recommended speed studies to establish speed limits. The 1971 edition mentioned both 85th percentile speed and pace speed, and that's the speed, a 10 mile an hour band that the highest majority of traffic travels within, the highest frequency travels in, and it mentions them more or less equally. It was the 2000 edition that added the guidance that the speed limit should be within 5 miles per hour, the 85th percentile speed. And the use of the 85th percentile speed has been a large problem for speed management and a major source of concern for the safety of bicycles and pedestrians in urban areas. Partially because it almost seems like a downward spiral if you're concerned the speed limit's too high. First of all, if everyone's traveling at that speed, you don't normally go and study it if everyone's going below the speed limit. You study it if everyone's going above the speed limit. And the recommendation would actually have you sometimes raising the speed limit. And then we also got to build in the bias that normally enforcement doesn't start occurring until people are exceeding speed limit by at least 10 miles an hour. So you get caught in this cycle that without recognizing that the dangers posed to bicycles and pedestrians. Lynn, I'll go to you for commentary, and I know Randy's going to want to say some stuff on this.
So since I started working for the county, the number one thing I get calls about is people want to lower their speed limit. And so when I first started working here, the very first one, we sent the guys out, they measured the 85th percentile speed, and it was, maybe 8 to 9 miles over the speed limit. So I was like, oh yeah, people are speeding, we should lower the speed limit. And they're like, no, because it's supposed to be within 5 miles per hour of the 85th percentile speed. So when people are speeding, it shows that the speed limit shouldn't be lowered, which is completely counterintuitive. So when you call all these people back and you tell them, I can't lower your speed limit because everybody's speeding, they're not happy about that.
Right.
So, it is a difficult thing. And the fact that I'm kind of excited for all these new parameters to look at and see what we can do. I mean, kind of the fact remains that people are going to drive the speed that's comfortable on the road. So if you have a perfectly straight road and nothing to make the person want to slow down, I guess maybe people are still going to speed, even if you do lower the speed limit. And then the other thing is you can't just lower a speed limit because then somebody will challenge it that it was a speed trap. So it's literally 90% of the phone calls I get.
So 2 quick points on what Lynn said. Number one, she's mentioned a couple of times since she went to the county. So Lynn, now we didn't talk about where people worked, but Lynn is the traffic engineer for Ocean County, New Jersey now, which is a very diverse county. It's got lots of rural areas. It's got areas that are in a protected lands. I think some of the Pinelands goes into it, don't they? And it's got shore resorts, and it's got a whole lot of retirement communities and a whole lot of regular people in it, like working people.
So anybody who wasn't in one of those categories Gordon just mentioned are the regular people.
So it's a vastly growing county, and there's one municipality that the growth has been enormous in. But and I guess the other point out here, though, that's important to mention is the fact that based on studies, changing the speed limit will not change people's speed. All right. The reality is the federal government, I think the Transportation Research Board conducted a study back in 1999 or 2000, 100 sites where speed limits were changed up or down 5 to 20 miles per hour. And they found the average speed changed by 1 to 2 miles an hour. That's it. Changing a couple of letters on signs is not going to change people's behavior. And I think that's one of the reasons why the people that feel the recommended, the guidance on setting the speed limit within 5 miles per hour, the 85th percentile speed, I think that's what they kind of stand behind. But that doesn't mean there's not a need for speed management. Randy, I know this is a subject this is very near and dear to your heart. So
I've been involved with the National Committee and Task Force and this language and working it through. Just provide a little bit of background. The reason, how did we get to this 85th percentile thing? Why is it there? And I think it's useful for us all to know as practitioners. It didn't just pop out of nowhere. It's a fact. It's a statistical measurement, but you got to put the background in place. In 1974, with the oil embargo, a national speed limit was set on all highways in the country. That didn't change until 1996, 20 years later. And it was in which the speed limits were reverted back to the states. And I think there was a need for uniformity to establish for speed limits the approach. If it's not a national speed limit, then what approach is needed? And in the 2000 manual, I think the logic was that the 85th percentile makes sense. And the research Gordon was talking about, much of it done on rural roadways, interstate freeways, expressways, large, higher speed facilities. Actually, there's science and practicality to that. But when you start drifting from the 70, 60, 55s into the 45, 35, 25 zone, the 85th percentile, there's no research that demonstrates the value of that approach in setting speed limits. It's just another metric. It's just another tool. It's just another measure. And what we do know now is looking at all the characteristics and context and the users. And Gordon put up the list. One of the ones that the National Committee has asked federal government to add is there's a difference between the presence of a bicycle lane, the presence of a sidewalk, and user activity of pedestrians and user activity of bicyclists. That can play a role in the analysis of evaluating speed limits. And so looking at context, characteristics, and users is very important. And so our comments reflect that. There are a lot of comments that are going into the document of lovers of the 85th percentile. They think it's the gold standard, and haters of the 85th percentile. It shouldn't exist. We should erase it. We should burn all the books and get rid of it entirely. The reality is it's somewhere in between, and there is science that shows speed distribution being useful. But if you're just measuring simply for a speed limit change to 85th percentile, it's very likely, without really thinking about your system and going in and using a lot of judgment and thinking about target speeds for facility types. You can go across the country and you could probably set every residential street at 25 and represent well over 90% of every condition in the country, if not 99%. You could look at most arterials and say 30 to 45 miles an hour, that's going to be the speed limit. Whatever, given the circumstances, if you look at how flat, wide, straight, and open the streets are, you could make targeted decisions without doing a study to group those. You could look at county roads, you could look at interstate roads, you could look at business districts and have target speeds that basically represent the conditions across the United States where a driver would expect the speed limit to be. We haven't done that yet. And that's for our industry to start really digging in, along with all the other tools that are being looked at, new US limits to tools, the NCHRP 1776 report, which is due out here in about a month, that provide tremendous wealth of understanding of how to set speed limits. So this is an area where it's work to be done, but I think FHWA has taken a good first step. I think the National Committee comments take another step. I think ITE's recommendations follow that. I think we can do better by the 11th, and by the 12th edition, I think we'll be in really good shape in setting speed limits.
Okay. Well, speaking of speed limits, we got to pick up the pace. No kidding. Just kidding. The crosswalks. Number one, and I emphasize this, there's some new guidance, which is very significant because non-intersection pedestrian crossings are generally unexpected by the road user. Warning signs and high visibility crosswalk markings should be installed. Not a requirement, but there's good guidance towards that. Curb ramps now need to be within the crosswalk lines. No more restrictions on mid-block crosswalks within 300 feet of existing signal. And so here's the picture view of what high visibility crosswalk looks like. It's more than just basically two transverse white lines. It is a ladder or basically just longitudinal lines that run along the crosswalk. And research has shown that makes a very large difference in both driver compliance to crosswalks and pedestrians deciding to cross actually at the crosswalk instead of somewhere else. So there's new guidance on decorative treatments, new section on rectangular rapid flashing beacons. Hybrid beacons are now allowed at intersections and driveways. Those are basically traffic signals that are only for pedestrians. So here's some of the pictures and examples. So before I move on to crosswalks at traffic signals, the next section, Lynn, anything on crosswalks you want to add?
Nope.
Randy?
Well, I agree with the hybrid beacons being at intersections. I never understood why that was prohibited.
Yeah, it wasn't actually prohibited. There was just a recommendation not to do it. But it was enough to to cause a lot of fights.
Yeah.
So crosswalks at signals. Pedestrian heads are now actually required at signalized intersections with crosswalks. If you have a crosswalk, you got to put ped heads up. The buffer time has been reduced to 2 seconds instead of the 3 seconds that it was before, between when the end of the flashing don't walk and the beginning of conflicting traffic. That was, I think, to provide a little more flexibility since a lot of people use 2 seconds for all red. Clearance time now includes the shoulder instead of just the edge of the traveled way, because the current guidance for the clearance interval only takes the pedestrian to the edge of the traveled way, but research has shown that pedestrians do not like standing out in the roadway next to the shoulder before the signal changes. So sometimes we can have some pretty wide shoulders out there. So that's kind of why they've done that. And there's now new inclusions for touch-free pedestrian push buttons. Thank COVID for that. And new figures for push button placement. So here's just, a couple of things I kind of like this picture of a push button behind guide rail and piles of material and, a walk and don't walk that are up at the same time. So anything to add on crosswalks before we move on to warrants? Okay, at signals rather. Warrants, and when I talk about warrants in this case, I'm mixing both stop signs and signals, but for warrants, there's been major revisions for guidance on up a minor street and all-way stop controlled in locations, more specific warrants including crash experience thresholds and sight distance. Bicycle and pedestrian needs are included. There's a lot more guidance on when you would use a stop sign versus uncontrolled versus an all-way stop. Traffic signals, and this may be incorrect, but I thought I heard at one point an engineering study is no longer required. I think it's still required, but I think you don't have to include all the elements anymore. Warrants themselves are no longer standards, which allows for signals that don't meet warrants based on engineering judgment. Okay, so the warrants themselves are no longer a standard. And as Lynn explained earlier, the existing language could be interpreted that way, but often isn't. Okay, significant revisions to the crash warrant. There's no more prohibition of school or pedestrian signals within 300 feet of another signal, and no changes to volume warrants. Just a couple of signs of things. So crash experience. First of all, this was already approved via interim approval number 19. Expanded criteria include looking at a 1 and 3 year crash evaluation period, crash type and severity, population, speeds greater than 40 miles per hour, and intersection geometry. So when I say intersection geometry, that means whether you're at a T intersection or a four-way. So you got different warrant thresholds for T intersections. So some of the issues with signal warrants. The peak hour and volume warrants have remained unchanged since 1978. The 8-hour volume warrants have remained unchanged since 1961, and they were originally for pre-timed signals. But actuated signals, you could, within those in the 1961 manual, you could skip the minor street volume on warrants if you make your signal actuated. That guidance was removed in 1971, probably because in the 60s and 70s, when you had detection, it would break and no one would fix it because of the gas prices that Randy talked about earlier. Anyway, and the requirement that crashes have to be reportable, which is still in the manual, creates a lot of inconsistencies by jurisdiction. In 16 states, little or any damage is reportable. Well, in 3 states, one of the vehicles actually needs to be towed before a crash counts as reportable. So what is a reportable crash? It's an injury, fatality, or property damage only crash of varying amounts. 3 states, any damage counts. 13 states, $300 to $700 total damage, anywhere in that range. 19 states, it's $1,000 to $1,500 total damage. In 10 states, it's $1,000 to $2,500 damage to one party. In 2 states, it's $3,000 total damage. And in 3 states, it's 1 or more cars can't be driven away. Now, the worst part about this is it actually puts the onus on the police officer to suddenly become an insurance appraiser and decide what the damage is worth. And I happen to work with somebody who used to be a police officer in Pennsylvania, and he said they went to great lengths to try to encourage people to try to drive their cars away to reduce the amount of paperwork they had to do. So anyway, that's kind of one of the problems when it comes to warrants on crashes. Lynn, this is a topic that's near and dear to your heart these days, because I think you told me that probably the second biggest thing you do in Ocean County is warrants for signals, correct?
Yes. Yeah. And I guess one of the points is that I think people don't realize that a reportable crash doesn't mean you reported it to the police. It's an actual check mark on the accident report. So it, like, people think, oh, a reportable crash, isn't that everyone you get a report for? But that's not what it is. But yes, we do have a lot of requests for signals. And I always, to me, the volumes, that's also counterintuitive to me. If you have 5 crashes at an intersection with a really low volume, or 5 crashes at an intersection with a lot of volume, which one needs a signal more? I don't know. I mean, if you don't have that much volume, but you've had so many crashes, like say you have 4 crashes and your volume's under the threshold, does that mean you don't need a signal? It's obviously a dangerous intersection, or you wouldn't have so many crashes for the small amount of people that are there. So like the whole thing with the volume, I really couldn't get behind that. So the fact that it's going to be even more emphasis on it being an engineering study, I'm in full favor of.
All right, thanks. And Randy, anything to add?
Now, the only thing I would say, particularly with the signals, is in the time frame of all that research on the warrants, it dates back quite a ways. Roundabouts have become very well studied, and the manual and the MPA provide emphasis of looking at alternative traffic control to signals. There are so many cases where roundabouts outperform traffic signals. It's
Yep.
ridiculous that the only reason we're putting them in for a lot of cases for private development property is it's cheaper. And the reality is they outperform safety characteristics of signals. And so when you do the study, an intersection conflict evaluation or control evaluation is an important study to undertake, because I think a lot of times there's alternative traffic control to the signal that can be put in place. The other thing I'd mention is the research done on stop signs is very current. The NCHRP work is now fully reflected in the recommendations of the NPA, and it does bring about a lot of new information, unlike the signal warrants.
All right, thanks for that. So yeah, the stop sign warrants are definitely worth reviewing and checking out when you get a chance. Flashing yellow arrow, which is already approved via interim approval number 17, improves safety and provides more left turning phasing options. There's an option to use 3-section and 5-section signal faces, flashing and steady yellow arrows in the same signal section. So that's the one change from what's out there right now. Right now, I think you have to have separate signal faces for if you have a steady arrow and a flashing arrow, but within the guidance, you can actually use the same head. Or not the guidance, the recommended changes. Lynn, anything to add there, or did I get that wrong? Or
Nope.
Okay. Overhead signs on conventional roads. There's a lot of proposed changes to letter size commensurate with context. So right now, whenever you use an overhead sign, you're really locked into a standard that was designed really for expressways and freeways. If you use it on conventional roads. So there's been a major change where there's been options added for conventional roads that have smaller signs, so you can have smaller mast arms, lighter weight structures, and it's better suited to urbanized conditions when you need them. Horizontal curves. This is one area that has been constantly evolving. And bear in mind that something just under 30% of the fatal crashes in this country happen on horizontal curves. So there was a reference. The 2009 manual had new guidance, which actually had a mandatory compliance date of December 31st, 2019, for implementing the requirements on horizontal curves. And the difference between a mandatory compliance date versus useful life argument is that it means that you actually had an obligation to do it. Part of it was anytime you're on a collector or arterial road that had more than 1,000 vehicles a day, that's what the ADT stands for, average annual daily traffic, you had to comply with the manual's requirements for horizontal curves. They've replaced that in this proposal. They didn't really replace much the proposed layouts, but they've given some extra options. And there's a replacement table that makes the volume that you need the minimum volume threshold to when you have to implement it relative to environments. And they've also recognized there's a difference between arterial or collector roads with or without pavement markings. So the recognition is the pavement markings themselves provide some of the guidance you need. And that being so, for that reason, you can see a slight difference in this table, meaning that as the volume, you basically can handle more volume when you have pavement markings before you're required to put in the various signage actually required to, versus without pavement markings. The other table that this is tied to, table 2C-4B, is the application of devices. And you can actually see when you have a 5 mile per hour difference between the posted speed limit and the speed of the curve, pavement markings or advanced horizontal alignment warning sign on paved roadways. So they're recognizing that you can actually use pavement markings instead of signage. And an advanced horizontal alignment warning sign on unpaved roadways. And the use of the advisory speed is optional in that case. Then you get to 10 miles an hour, it becomes recommended. And that means advanced horizontal alignment warning sign. And then you get into 15 miles per hour where 20 or more, where you have to use delineators or chevrons and advanced warning signs. Randy, any insights for us on this topic?
There's been a lot of good research, and it looked at the combination of pavement markings and signs together rather than in silos to produce the work that FHWA is included in the MPA. This is an area of particular interest if you're looking to improve safety as an agency or as a consultant doing a safety study. This area is going to be very important for people to consider. And the criteria is, I think, a substantial improvement in terms of clarity, in terms of the application of both markings and signs together.
Now, the downside is that there's no new compliance date for this, right? So the key is, if you haven't done your compliance on the old manual, the 2009 manual,
you whiffed on the first one.
Then you got to jump to this one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like Windows updates. You sort of skipped over one, but you got to get to the current.
Yes. The bottom line is there is requirements for you to take action on horizontal curves. Otherwise, I believe you've really opened yourself up for liability. Vehicle speed feedback sign. So there's now standard designs for sign and plaque. Background color is yellow, as the sign message is a warning, not a regulation. I've seen signs that are white. You're not allowed to use those anymore. And there's provisions for use of speed limit signs and horizontal alignment signs together. So these are kind of your example vehicle speedback signs, the thing that say your speed is this. And I'll let Randy expand on it, but these signs have definitely been found to be really effective, even over time.
Yeah, they're super effective. And there's urban myth that, oh, you put a sign out, nobody will pay attention to it. You're incorrect. That is not a fact. The facts are that these signs, when placed out, reduce speeds, and they do it, and it's durable over 4 and 5 years later. For example, in City of Austin and City of Bellevue, where they've installed these signs, the vehicles traveling, the percentage of vehicles traveling 5 miles an hour over posted speed or 10 mile an hour over posted speed, those vehicles that are the most prone to having safety issues associated with them are vastly reduced. Yeah, 10 mile an hour over goes from 7 to 10 miles in percentage points down to less than 1, many times even 0. And so you can't ignore the benefits of that. In addition, that it's not like just when you put the sign out, they do it, and then 5 days later, nobody's paying attention to it. That is not a fact. The data that we have that is measured 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 24 months, 5 years, in all cases, the durability of the speed reduction is as good, if not better, than the initial installation. So these are really valuable tools. And the horizontal curve part, I think, is one area, and it's an area I'm going to be commenting on to the docket, is a huge benefit for run off the road of being able to use the plaque in addition to the freestanding sign. Many times it gets a little crowded at a quick horizontal curve, like a loop ramp or something, to squeeze in an additional sign. But if you could use the warning plaque underneath one of the existing signs, like a chevron sign or the speed advisory confirmation sign that are already out there, it has a tremendous ability to produce safety benefits. So we're hoping that FHWA will be a little less rigid in their language and open up flexibility for designers and engineers to look at opportunities for safety advantages there.
Okay. Lynn, anything to add on this one? Or?
So I have to say that we have actually not found these to be effective in Ocean County. We put some out and we did before and after speed studies, and the 85th percentile speed went down by 1 mile per hour. I don't know if that's a New Jersey thing.
The 85th percentile isn't the measure.
Right, and so maybe I need to be looking at the higher.
Pace percentage is up, so you go from like 60s and 70s to 80% in the pace, which is always good, getting more uniform speed, and getting the 5 mile an hour plus and the 10 mile an hour plus the plunge. In many of those cases, I was telling you, Bellevue and Austin, the 85th percentile speed change, maybe a mile or 2 or 3, maybe if you're lucky, but those ones that are the safety guys that, taking 10% of the 10 mile an hour plus down to 0 or 1%, that's a big deal. But it may not affect your 85th percentile. So a lot of times we're looking at the wrong, the metrics that don't tell the full story.
So that's a good point for people to be looking at the speed data and not just saying, 85th percent was 1 mile per hour.
It's the gold standard. I'm in love with the 85th percentile. It's so good. It's sometimes helpful, but I'm telling you, the safety metrics, pace percentage 5 over, percentage 10 over, those, if somebody's going to die, it's because the speed is higher and their body can't take that speed. And so those are the vehicles we're concerned about. We're not concerned about the people driving 20 and 25 in a residential area. We're concerned about the 35, 45. If we get rid of those, they may not affect the 85th as much, but they affect safety in a big way if we can get the 10 plus down.
I'm going to relook at my data then.
All right.
Send it to me. I need that data.
Thanks. All right, let's move on. Islands and curb extensions. There's a new section on islands designated as pavement markings as opposed to raised islands. New section on curb extensions designated by pavement markings only. New section on tubular markings, and new section on obstructions in the roadway, which require object warnings and pavement markings. This was the case in the current manual, by the way, but it was a tough case to make because it didn't say it explicitly. So it's spelled out better. And this really does include raised channelization islands. So if you have a raised channelization island, you are required to put some kind of object marker warning on it. So, and here's kind of the example of the tubular warnings that you might see around a curb extension that's only pavement markings, or around a crosswalk to kind of do a narrowing of the throat. So, Lynn, anything to add on this one?
Nope.
Randy? Okay, good. We'll start making some time then. Colored pavement. Colored pavement will now be regulated heavily within the MUTCD. This is a major change. So yellow colored pavement is for areas separating opposing traffic only. White colored pavement, areas separating same direction traffic and right side shoulders. Green colored pavement, bicycle only facilities. Red colored pavement, transit only or transit preferential lanes. And purple colored pavement, lanes within and entrances to an open road tolling facility. So green is now for bicycles, red for transit, purple for toll roads, like easy pass or whatever. And yellow and white are as they always were, but you're only allowed to use the pavement that goes with the lane marking. So there's an elimination of low volume roads. The section 5 of the current manual was dedicated to low volume roads, and low volume roads were defined as those roads with less than 400 vehicles per day outside built-up areas of towns, cities, and communities. Everything from this section has been relocated to options within the appropriate sections. All right. So they've taken the whole chapter on dealing with low volume roads and moved it, just spread it out among the rest of the manual. What they did with the freed up part was added a new section on automated vehicles. So this new section is entirely made up. Nothing within it is a requirement. Agencies decide whether to fit roads for automated vehicles. New section provides agencies interested in AV systems a set of criteria using current body of knowledge. Recommended factors include lane widths, sign orientation, refresh/flicker rates for LED signs and signals, and ghost lines that you can find in work zones. Lynn, you're on the ITS New Jersey committee, right? So I don't know if you've got some insight on automated vehicles.
No, I don't. I don't have any insight. Yes, I am on ITS New Jersey, but it is regarding the MUTCD. I don't really have anything to add on that.
Okay, Randy, I know you got some insights to add on this section.
Yeah, I think one of the big issues everybody, and we had a lot of debate at the national committee level about that refresh rate issue, and Railroad in particular didn't want to change any of their equipment that was at 50 hertz in terms of its recognition. I think when people are looking at things, there's some details underlying that are important for analysts and designers to know, particularly on these refresh rates for epileptic seizures. If you're in the 5 to 60 hertz range, you could be in the territory where you can initiate epileptic seizures. So you need to be very careful of that in selecting that. But we've also realized is we've got situations where you can show a traffic signal and one of the heads is red and another signal head display is blank. And all it is the LED refresh not being picked up. And so for machine vision, that's important. And what we've identified and FHWA has identified is that 200 hertz is at a level where the vast majority, nearly all machine level recognition of these displays is better. You can get dynamic message signs that are at 50 and their panels, when you take a picture of it with just your cell phone, you'll get panels that are blacked out. And so to avoid that recognition was important. But what we also know is FCC has requirements on radio interference. And when you start grinding up the hertz level in terms of frequency of refresh, that the electrical motor and the radio interference can be an issue. And so above 240 hertz, we also know that could have an FCC compliance issue. So the National Committee made a recommendation to FHWA to include that range as, if you go outside that range to do evaluation, because the FCC compliance can get you red tagged and your project can get shut down real fast because of that.
Okay, all right, thanks. Temporary traffic control. So most of the changes to this section, part 6, are just rearranging existing information. Though there are changes related to the accommodation of pedestrians with disabilities, including elimination of consideration of level of usage by pedestrians with disabilities in design decisions. So the bottom line is you can no longer overlook it if you think there's not going to be, if there's not a lot. All pedestrian detours need to be accessible, period. So, and this picture I've given you, that was a real sign of a real project that I happened upon once. Oops, sorry, there we are. Not only is there a bad spelling mistake on the detour and non-compliant sign, but it's not accessible. It's just not. Anyway.
Well, they had a good heart. They were trying, right?
Yeah. Bicycle signage and pavement markings. Several new signs and new requirements on placement of shared lane markings, shiro, or commonly known as shiros, within a lane, telling you where to place it within the lane. So here's just some examples, but there's a lot of the changes to the manual come to this section on bicycles. Bicycles at signalized intersection. We now have bicycle signals, 2-stage bicycle turn boxes, intersection bicycle boxes, and bicycle detector markings. So here's just some examples. This would be a 2-stage turn for bicycle lane, where there's actually a space carved out in the intersection for bicycles to wait to make their move. Here's a bicycle signals and signal lenses with little bicycles, a pavement marking with wait here for green. And here's an example of a bicycle box where you basically have an advanced stop bar for bicycles, or pull the stop bar back for vehicles, whichever you prefer, so that they can capture the lane and not put themselves at risk if they're trying to make a turn. Bicycle lanes themselves, green colored pavement, separated bicycle lanes, buffered bicycle lanes, contraflow facilities, all addressed. So contraflow facilities where you have the double yellow separating bicycles going in a different direction, the extension of bicycle lanes across intersections through dashed green markings, green colored pavement optional, buffered lanes, or lanes where you might have parking within it, like you can see in New York City avenues these days, where you have the bicycle lane separated from it. So these are some of the major area changes for, at least with regard to bicycles. Lynn, any thoughts on this?
No.
Randy?
It's one of the areas when we were talking about added standards, regulatory and warning signs didn't have a whole lot of new standards. Bicycles and railroads both were the major additions of new standards, and there's a lot of new content in the MPA.
Yeah. Yes, they are, and for good reason. So busway grade crossings. They've added buses in semi-exclusive alignments, or addresses it for busway crossings. Proposed guidance recommends equipping busway grade crossings with active warning systems, that being flashing light signals. Provides option for automatic gates to be used. Gates would need to comply with provisions for rail grade crossings. So here's just some pictures of busways here. So the idea within this is really, all they've done is really treated busways as the equivalent of light rail transit. So light rail transit grade crossings. Proposed requirement for at least one crossbuck per approach. Proposed requirement to use active traffic control systems where LRT speeds exceed 25 miles per hour. Revised existing standard to require automatic gates where the LRT speeds exceed 40 miles per hour as 35 miles per hour. Similar requirements for pathways and sidewalks within 25 feet of the crossing. Just some color examples here. So the idea is there's some tweaking of LRTs and proposals. So just in closing, well, actually first, any comments on busways or light rail from either of you?
Yeah, the only, I did make comment on this, particularly on the bus. One of the things, and the same goes with pedestrian, that FHWA could take all of its content in signs and markings and signals related to bus and pedestrians and group it better so people can find the pedestrian materials. It doesn't have to have a new part, doesn't have to create new sections, but I think it would improve uniformity by giving organized sections to particularly those two modes where the information is sort of ad hoc and scattered today throughout the manual.
Right. Okay, that's fair. So reminder, comments due today if you want to comment on any of these proposed changes. And there were 15,000 comments in the 2009 edition that came from 1,900 listings on the list. As we said, when we were recording this on May 11th, days before this, there were over 7,600 entries for comments already, meaning there were already 4 times as many as the 2009 manual and counting. So with that, closing thoughts. Randy, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Lynn. You're muted, Randy.
I just muted myself. It's up to 7,700 comments now. It keeps going up. So yeah, I would just say there's lots of great content here. I know a lot of people get excited. They want to reframe the document because it doesn't include everything they want. Just a couple of comments there. One is this won't be the last MUTCD update. FHWA values a tremendous amount of research and documented pragmatic evidence about information because it evolves from safe performance on the roads. And so that takes time, a lot of cases. The other is that there is, I think, plenty of ground to look at some of these standards and their flexibility. And I think, again, in the future manual, that will be a great place. But to reframe and stop the process now, when we're literally within 12 months of the end zone, those curb warning signs, the RRFB, a ton of stuff that is not in the manual today will remain not available. And we will continue to have fatalities caused by the fact that we don't have these resources available to us. I would highly encourage everyone to encourage FHWA to proceed with the 11th edition on a timely basis, and also proceed with more timely updates so that we can capture the thoughts and concerns that people have about the manual.
Okay, closing thoughts, Lynn?
So I agree that I think it's critical that this manual goes out based on the schedule that they have, and it's not stopped to revamp the entire document. I'm really very passionate about the uniformity of traffic control devices. I know that people do have ideas, there's specific situations, but that's why you use your engineering judgment. The amount of suggestions I get from people, like from municipalities that ask me, oh, can I put speed bumps on the road? No. Well, if it's your road, but can we go out and just do it ourselves? No. Like, there are a lot of people that want to do things that will not be safe. And I think having a manual that spells that out is critical.
Okay, you don't want them going to Home Depot and doing those kinds of things.
No. Yeah, can you just buy one of those plastic ones and put it across the road? No, we can't.
No.
Well, anyway, with that, I think we're going to open up to Q&A for the remainder of this session. And you'll see the real us in a minute, not the pre-recorded one. So I'm going to stop this recording.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Q&A. Fantastic presentation. I'm actually going to bookmark this on my browser, because anytime I have a question on MUTCD, I'm going to look at this presentation. So, to get your 1.5 PDHs, and there's a 30-second delay, I'm going to actually ask the questions, and if you can, start answering online. So, the first question is, what is a traffic control device? So as you're responding, as you can see, we've already lined up the first question. There's been a lot of talk about making the 85th not making the 85th percentile speed the end all to setting speed limits. How big of a change is that? I'm asking the panelists, please chime in.
Well, I'm going to take it in a little different direction. Luigi, thanks for the question. And there was a comment about the city of Austin data and vehicle speed feedback. And one of the things about the 85th percentile, it's science, it's a statistic, and it's a piece of information. It's a element of an engineering study. It is not the engineering study. But one of the things that's interesting about it in a lot of cases is it doesn't tell the full story. So, for example, on vehicle speed feedback, and I mentioned this in the chat, there's underway is ITE speed hump refresh, and you'll find a lot of the information I'm about to show here in there, along with a lot more. And when we use these vehicle speed feedback signs, there's a real driver psychology about getting information. People don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be Don Garlett's hot rod driver of the century. I'm going to run as fast as I can down the street. You don't wake up that way. And the feedback signs help remind folks there's a psychological feedback that goes with that, and they've been very effective. This graph basically shows over time the use of fixed mounted vehicle speed feedback signs and the impact on the 85th percentile. But if you look at it over time, it's a few miles an hour, and a lot of people might say, a few miles an hour is not that important. But more importantly, when you look at the vehicle speed reductions and the percent of vehicles going 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, going down from very large percentages, 30% down to less than 10%, And even more important, the 10% or 10 mile an hour over the posted speed going from, less than 9% to less than 1%. Those are the safety metrics. Those are the metrics that tell you about concerns that, those kinetic energy issues of the high-speed users. And so the 85th percentile is a useful tool. It's a useful tool in setting a speed limit. It's a useful tool in looking at a lot of things in the manual, but it's not the only one. And there's a lot of other metrics that tell the story about safety. And particularly these driver feedback signs over time, their durability isn't, the urban myth is, oh, you put them out there and they're never, they'll ignore those signs over time. Well, this is 5 years of data from Austin, and you can see the flat line. It's not like the people decided, okay, I'm going to be a speeder now after 4 years of watching the sign or 2 years of watching the sign. So these signs that FHWA is included in the MPA, very valuable. We need standards. They're providing them. We need these updates to the manual as quickly as we can.
And the best part is you saw a disconnect in our presentation between how people were using the data from their driver feedback signs and how they weren't recognizing this factor. That really it's about reducing all speeds, not just the design speed that we talk about or the 85th percentile. I mean, I think, unfortunately, as engineers, we get too hung up on our worst case scenario or being appropriately conservative. So we basically just say that the speed at which 85% of the people are traveling at or below, that's that number. That's what matters. It's not what matters. It's really exposure. Look at the percentage of people exceeding the speed limit. Those are major reductions that held up over time for a device that, yes, it needs to be powered with solar or whatever, but the upside is, it doesn't interfere with emergency vehicles. People don't trip on them.
Doesn't interfere with a bicyclist or scooter or school bus.
You can plow the snow.
All kinds of good stuff. Lynn, you might want to mention, we were chatting just this week about work that your staff was doing with speed limit or doing speed studies, and learned a little bit along the way as we were going through.
Yeah, so we put out a temporary, like a portable speed limit sign. Your speed is. And because we got complaints about speeding. And then a month later, we just went out and did another speeding study to see if there was any change. And basically the miles per hour for the 85th went down by 1 mile per hour. But then I sent all the data to Randy, and he, everybody
in the crowd, by the way, everybody in the crowd should send me data.
He sent me back a spreadsheet the next day with an analysis, and my results on my road weren't as extreme as what he's showing on the screen, but there was a bigger reduction in 5 over and 10 over than the 85th percentile. So it was eye-opening. It was great.
Yeah, the other thing we were talking about was, a lot of the classic speed studies you get from vendors, if you buy equipment or you have people do it, they do it in 5 mile an hour bins, and they'll give you it's almost standard. You get 13 bins, and it's like, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 60, 65, 70, 75. Well, when you're doing a 25 mile an hour road, looking at speeds at 45 and above make no sense. Because if there's one whoopee out of 2,000, it doesn't make sense. But if you set those bins in 1 mile an hour, 2 mile an hour around the speed limit, you can gather a lot better information. And it actually does affect the calculations when you're looking at 85th percentile, when you have more precise information.
So when we
really
changed
important.
The bins, based on your recommendation, Randy, the speed limit was, I think the speed limit was 30, and we got in 39 for the 85th percentile. But then when we changed the bins, it came out to 36. So it was a big difference.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's go to a question before we look at all the questions that are online. Something I'm curious about, having going through an update of a manual of this magnitude. I'm sure you got a lot of comments. Can you give us a flavor of how many comments and what's been the theme of those comments?
Randy, you're the tracker in chief, so you got to talk about it.
It's amazing. We've been looking at the pace that the comments have been coming in at. And Gordon and I were talking on, I think, Monday morning, and there were 4,000. By the time we talked on Tuesday morning, it was 7,500. By the time we talked a little later, it was 10,000. And this morning, it's 16,500. And one, because I haven't submitted mine yet.
So Randy, how many hours in a day do you work? Sounds like a lot of response.
All of
I'm
them,
retired, right? I'm retired.
Yeah.
I get to be one of those. I'm a gadfly now. It's great.
Yeah. So the thing is, Randy, didn't you drill down though and find out that 3,000 of those comments that came in, that between the 4,500 and the 7,500 were the exact same comment?
Yeah, there's
from multiple sources.
A lot of form letters being issued that are. I think America Walks sent out a form letter and it generated thousands of responses. Fuel and energy companies that don't like the word gas, want the word fuel, submitted, if not hundreds, thousands of comments to the same thing. So there's, when I say 16,000, is that 16,000 that look like ITE's comments or the National Committee's comments in detail? No, there's probably at best a few hundred of those.
Yeah.
But there's thousands of repetitive comments in that territory.
Well, in 2009, people weren't quite as savvy with doing these things.
Yeah. I think you're right. You're right.
There were 1,900, I believe, docket entries in 2009, which translated into 15,000 specific comments when you took out the specific pieces.
Right. So imagine how many 10,000 are going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully they got a robot to do that instead of say that's the same, that's the same, that's the same, that's the same. Because I feel sorry for these guys who've worked really hard. The folks at FHWA. Yeah. I mean, you can judge what they've done any way you want, but you can't question the heart and the amount of work that those folks put into this document for all of our benefit, for the safety of the traveling public, and there's a lot of work ahead for them. And I hope we see the results and the fruits of that in the next 12 months.
And their passion for making the road safe. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, just one comment I want to make is that I've been reading the MUTCD ever since I became a traffic engineer. It's the encyclopedia of anything we do on the roadway. So all of you who haven't read it, keep reading it forever.
Well, Luigi, I want to say, to tell people like that, it's like reading the Bible, and you're not going to read the whole thing in one go sit through. But what happens is you have experiences, you're working on a temporary traffic control, and you find some sections and you learn about it. Or you got to do a signal warrant, and you get into those sections and you learn about it. And I think the thing that's important for a lot of our members is nobody learns it overnight, and much of it is learned experience through exercises and different projects and work, but knowing that it's there as a resource. And oh, by the way, here's a cheat. Control F. It's really simple. You just use Control F and type a word in, and you can find just about anything. It's not like you have to read the 900 pages of the stuff. And Control F works really well on both the HTML and the PDF version. So I would encourage people, to just use it progressively, as you have issues that come up related to marking signs or signals or temporary traffic control.
I prefer Control R for Control Randy. I'm just gonna hit it and then call you.
Just call up Randy.
Just call up Randy.
I'll be out cutting the garden. You can just call me anytime. I'll have my cell phone with me. I'll answer your call anytime.
I have a confession to make. There's many times I wanted to call Randy and talk to him about issues, but I look at how much time I have available, and I sometimes stop myself.
Yeah,
because you know a lot.
That's fantastic.
Oh, and don't forget about the time difference. Randy's 3 hours behind, so don't call him at 8 o'clock in the morning.
We're not having hot sauce right now because it's not even breakfast time yet.
However, Randy has interpreted that time zone difference to give him 3 extra hours to work a day.
That's why I keep my Northeastern attire around for the time frame from 5 in the morning until 8 in the morning. Then I switch to the West Coast attire.
I only hope that the Australian, New Zealand people don't catch on and start taking up the rest of his time.
Well,
It's Back to the Future, right? Future traveling.
this is a sidebar comment. Never put Gordon, Randy, and Lynn on the same panel, because let me tell you, I had to tell them to stop responding to the comments because I have no questions to ask you. Okay, just in case everybody was wondering, I actually told them to stop responding. So let's go to one of the questions. I just had a good one over here. Are there details for temporary ADA ramps?
Look, many state DOTs are using them now, but the MUTCD doesn't contain specific design criteria or like specifications. It's not a design specification. Okay, it just tells you have to use something. But and the reality is that is the domain of the ADA and ADAG, not MUTCD. So they're but I will tell you, a lot of states are starting to include details for temporary ramps, and I mean the big issue is making them a pay item, so contractors can get paid for them and specifying. I once went to great lengths on a project to actually stage the sidewalk into multiple plans so it was always accessible. And we didn't use a temporary ramp because we didn't have a pay item to use it. And as soon as we had the kickoff meeting, the contractor said, "You don't really expect us to build it this way, do you?" I said, "I've done my job. If you guys decide to change it, that's on you, not me."
That's not that uncommon, but I think we're seeing more and more standard drawings starting to show up. And so if the person asking the question, I would highly encourage, look at your state DOT standard drawing sets. A lot of states, and if you're not, your state doesn't have it, other states do now. And so things like YODOC portable barriers for pedestrians, these plastic channelized pedestrian channelizers, some states have them in their standard drawing sets, but that is definitely not domain of the MUTCD.
Great. Next question. Are contraflow bike lanes safe at intersections with pedestrian crossings?
If you look at the designs, they're usually separated from the crosswalks themselves. I think that's all in the design detail and making sure there's enough sight distance and everything else. I mean, I don't see it as being any more of a conflict than how we deal with vehicles and pedestrians. It's just another moving travel mode. That's all.
Yeah, I think this, once again, if you didn't get the message, and this should be Luigi's next quiz, is characteristics, context, and users. Always use those, because there are many cases where those make tons of sense, and there are other cases where they make no sense whatsoever. Higher speed conditions are situations where you need to be very, very careful. Lower speed conditions are opportunities where those make some sense, depending on the circumstance.
Great. Next question, which I think we may have answered, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Is the MUTCD taking any comments that are not substantiated by research and creating AASHTO, NCHRP research needs statements to hopefully get the research ahead of the next future revision?
That's an interesting question. I will tell you that the National Committee every 6 months refreshes problem statements based on information such as that and submits them to the AASHTO group and to NCHRP for consideration, not only NCHRP research, but for synthesis work and for pool fund study type exercises. And so I know that group particularly they have a research committee that Brian Katz heads from Virginia, does a great job, and they constantly are putting forward, but you'd be amazed at the amount of research dollars that go to not this stuff, in terms of structures and ditches and pipes and all kinds of things associated with transportation and research, pavement materials and asphalt. And so there's a limited amount of money that goes towards those studies, but problem statements can be created by a lot of folks, but the National Committee does a really good job of documenting that. And we just did one actually on 200 hertz refresh rates for dynamic message signs that's out, and hopefully we'll get that one funded this year.
Here's a question. Is light rail and heavy rail standards cover both? I'm not sure which one is this one.
There are
grade
separate
crossings. Yeah, grade crossings are covered in Part 8 of the manual.
Right, and there are separate rules for light rail and heavy rail. Yeah.
Here's a trivia question. Randy is wearing a shirt from which Northeastern District meeting? So it looks like New Haven is the winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was quick.
So yeah, we didn't send him one for this conference yet. It got lost in shipping. So
Let me see if there's any more questions to ask. Did I miss any? I don't know if you guys are looking on the anything we want to.
No, but something that's near and dear to a lot of our hearts is traffic signal warrants. So I'm just going to throw in a little bit on that. We did add a slide talking about how old the warrant volumes are. Now, even though the manual will now recognize the warrant not an end-all and be-all and allow an engineering study, which hopefully will allow a little more flexibility, I'm pretty sure that most agencies are still going to live and hold people accountable to those numerical warrants. So I really do feel like that should be re-looked at. I mean, the warrants we're dealing with haven't been touched since 1978. And the warrants for 8 hours, they were from 1961, and at the time, they only applied to pre-timed traffic signals. Okay, so for actuated traffic signals, you could skip the side street requirements for volume. Now, in 71, we went away from that. I really do think that those numbers really do need to be looked at again.
And that was, so Gordon's the chair of the Traffic Engineering Council, and we put together some comments, and that was one of the things we submitted as one of our comments from our group.
Yeah.
And it's not ground that hasn't been applied before, because the NCHRP work about in the last decade, probably about mid 2015-ish, there somewhere in that territory, on stop sign and yield warrants and not signal controlled intersections was very thorough. Texas A&M did some really great work, and that's all been incorporated into the manual. So that's definitely fertile ground for some investigation.
Fantastic. Well, I don't see any more questions here, so I think we're going to conclude our panel and the last session of the Northeastern District meeting. And I want to thank you, Gordon, Randy, and Lynn. Fantastic presentation, and it's evidenced by all the comments and your rapid firing of answering every single question. I was like, what? I was looking at the thing. I was like, please leave me a few. It's anyways. So thank you, panel. Fantastic presentation, and this concludes the Northeastern District meeting. However, hold on. I want to thank everybody, all the presenters. Without you, we wouldn't have a conference. I want to thank all our sponsors for supporting ITE, and especially the LAC committee, whose hard work and dedication to delivering, PDH credits and conferences as we have. And we're all looking forward to 2022 to be live in upstate New York next year. And with that, finally, you're going to get to see the last hot seat interview. And this is the...
Wait, Luigi, before you go on to that,
Yes.
I want to say, first of all, thank you, Luigi, for giving us a great format and all the video that goes with this and bringing this to the next level. And also, really, one last thanks, my personal thanks to Amir and Steve for, they've been sweating small details for months, okay, just so you know, every little detail of this thing.
Right. It was so sad that we spent so much time putting together the in-person event, and then it got put out, and then they didn't miss a beat. They just kept going, and we were able to turn it into a virtual. And that one thing I wanted to mention was, usually I hate having to go on Friday because everybody goes home before the sessions, but it's virtual, so I guess no one had anywhere to go. They had to go to work.
Absolutely. I mean, Amir and Steve have been phenomenal. I was on the phone every day, final details, very detailed, and it was all a team effort, and I want to thank everybody.
Yeah, I would say, you heard me say last year, shape your community. I'll go back to Zaki Mustafa's line, together we're the best. And I can't thank you all, the Northeastern District and all the folks involved. These meetings don't happen by accident. And Luigi, this has been a wonderful, really great setup. You've really outperformed. Thank you.
I credit to everybody. And then finally, the thing I really want to say, this video that you're going to see is for you. This is straight entertainment. We're not really answering the questions. Just we have a quick sponsor video for 50 seconds and then 23 minutes of just entertainment. So enjoy it, okay?
It's worth it.
Yes.
2022. See you next year.
I'm going to get post-traumatic stress disorder from watching it.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Goodbye.
At HDR, we've always helped communities adapt to a changing world. From bringing power to the plains more than 100 years ago, to reimagining how we connect, how we solve challenges, and how we create a brighter future. Leading the transportation transformation and modernizing mobility. With the unique perspective of many, we're motivated to shape our world for the better through inclusion, collaboration, and innovation. At HDR, we do things right to make great things possible.
I don't think we should stall anymore, even though my mouth is on. This one, the Reaper, actually, my mouth is definitely on fire. I don't know about you folks, or
I'm sweating.
Okay.
I'm actually.
All right, so.
Oh man.
The next one is the bomb, Beyond Insanity. Okay, so I have to warn everybody. This one here is the one where everybody has difficulty. Okay.
Like what kind of difficulty? Like, should we call 911 or?
No, we already did 911. We did 511 before. So we're at Beyond Insanity. The skull level is between 125,000 and 135,000. So we're going from 75 to 125. But I have to say that's the one where everybody couldn't handle it. So don't feel bad if you have to get up a little bit and take a break, okay? So...
You've done other interviews. Have you had folks who've gone all the way through LOS?
Everybody has.
Oh,
So I just want to let you know that.
I thought we had an excuse.
Don't worry, Adam. You're not in this alone. Hey,
We're a team.
we're a team. We got to get through this together.
Ready?
Yep.
Look, by the
Let's
way,
do it.
just look. There's a lot here, okay? This is not...
No kidding, right?
Okay. That's rough.
Why would you? It like tastes like fire. Why would you even eat this?
I have no idea. I still don't understand.
It's like.
Whoa. That's not good.
This was the tough one.
This is if the Spartans had chicken wings in ancient Greece. This would be what they would use.
All right. Think about the... I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh my god. The second wave is worse.
Whose turn is it? You at?
I hope not.
Thinking about the future of transportation, what would you say?
Oh my god. Luigi, this is crazy. Oh shoot.
With Adam.
Holy shit. Oops.
Oh man.
Milk.
Tissue.
Holy cow. Holy, this is hot.
Oh. Oh man.
Oh my God.
Oh, there's more beyond that?
I think I burned myself. Sorry. Oh my God. I'm crying.
Ooh, that was good.
Holy cow, that one's bad.
Need more napkins.
My throat. Lips and throat.
Is that a tattoo?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Is that a Canada tattoo?
yeah. Made in Canada. It's like they make everybody get it. At least Ontario.
My God, my mouth is on fire.
That's pretty good, actually. Come on, Luigi. One more to go.
I haven't even asked the question yet.
Oh, okay.
Take your time.
I don't know if it's worse to delay or keep going.
It's terrible.
Okay.
Wait, so what was this Scoville on that?
135,000.
What's the next one?
$1 million.
I forgot.
I thought you said that.
No,
Oh, it's $500,000?
it's not as bad. The last one's not bad. The bomb is the worst. Thinking about the future of transportation, what would you say is the next big challenge or challenges facing the industry that professionals should start thinking about?
I just touched my eyes.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
So,
I didn't.
Adam's got seconds before he explodes. No, I'm kidding. So here's, Luigi, to get back to this question. Transportation's changed more in the last 5 to 6 years than it did in the 40 years before that. We got, like, modes up the wazoo now. People everywhere, everything. The biggest thing we have to learn to do as a profession is learn to unlearn and relearn. We have to go back to the basics sometimes and relearn everything from scratch. We can't keep doing things the way we were and just incrementally fixing them. We can't basically, like right now there's a huge push to give equity to the and inclusion to our travel modes. Right, the cars have dominated for a long time, so now bicycles want their space, and ride sharing wants a space, and transit still needs space, and pedestrians still need to want to walk. And watch out for all those segways and scooters. So we have to learn to unlearn and relearn. That's, I think, the biggest challenge we got.
By the way, my mouth is absolutely on fire. I don't know about you guys.
It's crazy.
Mine's pretty hot.
This is one of the hottest sauces I've ever had. Anybody want to add on to that?
I just want to stall somehow. But
You want me to reread the
I
question?
can't even really think for myself right now.
Thinking about the future of transportation, what would you see is the next big challenge or challenges facing the industry? And professionals should start thinking about it. Oh, we can go straight to the next question.
Oh,
And the next sauce you mean.
America?
Crazy. I'm okay for now. So feel my lips. That's good, right? Feel my tongue.
Reminds me of an old cartoon I saw where somebody, yeah, where there's a guy in what looks like a Mexican restaurant saying, "See, the chili is really hot." In the back door, you see the devil with fire brimstone coming out.
All I know right now is my nostrils are burning because from blowing my nose. It's just not good. Remember how beginning we said we were friends? Not so much anymore lately.
Hey, listen, this is the 5th time I'm doing this, okay? So, I've lost. You know what's the great thing about this? There's a lot of health benefits eating hot sauces. Good for metabolism. I lost 2 pounds between interviews. So you may lose a couple of pounds tomorrow. It's amazing. Good for your heart, digestive tract.
It doesn't feel like it's good for my heart right now. I feel like I'm gonna have a heart attack.
This would probably be the only advantage to getting COVID and losing your sense of taste.
I'm gonna die from drinking milk.
I told you you're gonna need milk. I told Amir, I said, I need a couple gallons. I was like, you sure? I go, trust me, I need more milk.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anything to stop.
Please help. Thank you. So this one here, I think it's named appropriately, effectively hell, level service C.
Yeah,
Would you say that?
that was bad. It's still bad. How long does this last?
It'll go away by the next hot sauce. By the way, surprisingly, the last hot sauce is not as bad as Beyond Insanity. But
You keep saying
What
that,
makes
but I'm
you
not
think
sure I
that we're
believe
gonna
you.
trust you on
Yeah, exactly.
well, look,
I think I'm losing my hearing.
I'm seeing dead people. It's some of them don't even know they're dead.
are you guys ready for the next one?
Sure.
All right. So I'll play this up before we go to the next one.
It's the fastest way to the other side, my friends.
What happened to the other night? Oh.
What constitutes me trying the next one?
there's
Let's
one here.
define this.
Oh,
Can I
there
just put it on my tongue? Is that enough?
That's fine, whatever you can do. So wait, so just so you know, I want to make sure that everybody's aware of it. So this is my 5th interview. Everybody's eaten all the hot sauces. So this one here is Fiery Full, level service F, Fiery Congested. It's the Hellfire hot sauce. Fiery Full, the hottest sauce in the world without extract. I don't know what that means, but it's a Scoville level of 550,000. That's what's on it right now.
Okay.
Okay. However, there's an optional dab. If you want to put it on your chicken wing, this will bring it up to 2 million. This is the XXX Hot Ones Last Dab by Hedonist.
No. I'm good.
I mean, looking at us, what do you think?
Why would somebody do that?
Are you gonna do it?
Absolutely.
I'm good. We're not.
You're not going to do it.
Give me a dab. If you can do it, I can do it.
I want to show you how much I'm going to put down. Like,
Okay, just a little bit.
Good for you. Good for you, Luigi. Good for you, God.
just
Yeah,
a little bit.
I'm not a team player.
Oh man.
That's it. That's all you got to do.
I'm gonna do less than that.
A little.
No, I'm doing less than
Yeah.
that. Here.
By the way, the first time I did this, I didn't realize there wasn't a cap on top of it, and I spilt it onto the chicken wing. And it was the worst thing I ever did because it really lit up my mouth. All right.
So what? 2 million?
You're up to 2 million right now.
We're at 2 million.
Yes. 500,000, 500,000.
It's fine. It's fine.
All right.
I have a family, you know.
Okay, I haven't had any of the 2 million yet. The $500,000's not so bad.
I told you.
2 million. You guys are lucky you didn't do it.
Well, they haven't done anything yet.
Oh,
Yeah, I did one.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not.
I don't think it matters anymore, but
It's not.
I think
as bad as the
I
other
think number 5 was worse.
one. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
All right.
Oh, definitely. I mean, unless it hits.
Do you want some more? You want the 2 million now?
No.
No. Good.
Very kind.
Appreciate.
Yeah.
Appreciate the offer.
So I just took a sip of this before.
Okay. So that's the trick. So, finally, the last question. Steve, I know.
Okay.
It's almost over. Okay.
Okay.
So I have to admit the bomb was pretty hot.
The bomb was hot. That was the bomb.
Yeah, that was the bomb. This one here is Hellfire Hot something.
Hellfire what?
Hellfire Hot Sauce. Oh, okay.
Hellfire hot sauce?
Yeah. Fiery Full.
Hellfire hot sauce, fiery full.
That's level service F.
That's a level service F.
Yes.
Yeah, so with total breakdown.
So this one right now is 550,000 Scoville. And now
Okay.
it was optional 2 million last dab, which I'm going to do it right now myself, okay?
So it's optional.
It's optional. So, and I'm going to put a nice dab on this one. Oh my God.
Oh God, what are you doing?
That's a lot, okay?
All right, can I dab it a little bit
Yeah, you
less
can
than
do
that?
that. So by the way, have a look over here. This is a lot, right?
It's a lot of dabbing.
Okay.
Do you know what dabbing? My son says this is dabbing in school like that. I don't know if that might be more hip, but anyway. So, dab.
It's just a little bit. You could do whatever you
All
want.
right, so
I didn't realize how much came out.
All right. So I'm just gonna put a little bit. All right.
That's
Is
a
that
lot.
good?
That's a lot.
Is that a lot? That's
I-
more, that's
is
less than you.
a little less, but
So what is it? You gotta call this out. What is this?
this is the Last Dab XXX Hot Sauce by Hedonist.
By who?
Hedonist, I think.
Oh,
Did I
great.
pronounce it correct?
Hedonist.
Yeah.
Yes, hedonist. Yes. So, so this one was the hell one, and this one's the hedonist one, right?
Yeah.
All right. So
Ready?
we're gonna go to hell after this.
Yeah,
so.
okay. Ready?
Ready?
Cheers.
Cheers. Siniasu. That's in Greek.
All right. That's a lot of hot. I put a lot of sauce in that. Surprisingly, it's not that bad.
Hold on. We're not done yet. It's not that bad.
It's not that bad at all. I don't know
The
what
bomb was worse.
the bomb was worse. That's weird. And I did put a lot of Last Dab.
Am I gonna feel this like soon?
I'm not sure. Well, anyways,
Okay. Should we get another one? Do the bomb again?
I don't know. It's-
Oh man. Got it.
Okay, it's getting a little bit hot there.
It is though.
Yeah. Outside of work. Okay, actually, that's getting pretty hot now.
Yes, it is.
Outside of work, any interesting hobbies? Oh man, that's getting hot now.
So that takes some time to actually go into your system.
Yeah, holy cow. Okay, outside of work, any interesting hobbies or passion you would like to share with all of us that you use to help maintain a balanced work life? Yeah, that's hot. That's hotter. Yeah, it took a while.
I need a minute to think about this. All right. So I just touched my nose. What does that mean? You all right?
Yeah,
You want to stand up and do this?
yeah.
I think I'm okay. I think you put too much of this stuff on.
Yeah, I know. Well, I got it. You got it. It's good. It's good. It's good.
All right. Yeah, that is pretty hot. And I'm starting to feel it more. I'm feeling more now than I did a minute ago.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God. All right. So how do you
What's that, Luigi?
work-life balance?
Yeah.
Just whatever.
That's
it is.
great. Yeah.
How do you maintain a work-life balance?
So
My mouth is absolutely on fire right now.
every breath I take,
Yes.
I can't get the words out of my mouth.
Holy cow! This is.
You almost touch your eyes.
This is. I know.
That was one of the rules.
Yes. Wow. This is really. This is hot.
All right. I think I'm okay now. I'll try this. Okay, ready? I'm just gonna hold the milk.
Yeah.
All right. So interesting hobbies and passions. So everybody has their hobbies and passions, right?
Yeah.
You know, they. So one example, I love basketball. I grew up playing basketball. I played basketball. You right?
Yeah.
You right?
Yeah, just my mouth is on fire.
Okay, hold on.
My lips are on fire, actually. Oh my God, this is so hot. What the heck happened? What? That took a while. Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, continue.
All right.
I'm the host. I'm not supposed
That's
to.
okay. Yeah. I think I'm supposed to go. I think I'm all right now. I think you put too much of this stuff on.
Yeah.
So when you do this again, don't put that much dabbing on.
No. That's a bad idea.
All right. All right. So I'm just gonna talk, okay?
Yeah, please talk.
If I see you like falling, I'll. You know.
I'm just concentrating to stay alive right now.
Okay.
So
All right.
Just talk.
All right. So I love basketball. I grew up playing basketball. Okay. I played basketball when I was younger. Played in high school. Played in college. Went to a small college called Cooper Union, and played on the basketball team as a point guard. And to this day, I have a passion for that sport. My son got him into the sport. He plays basketball, and we have a basketball hoop in the backyard, so we play together. And we watch basketball games. And there's one basketball player in particular that we've keen and grown interest to. His name is Giannis Antetokounmpo. He's of Nigerian descent, but was born and raised in Greece, and was drafted in the NBA, and in 2013-14, and he's become a superstar in the industry, and he's been a very big proponent of his heritage and growing up in Greece, and we've really, we've seen him play against the Brooklyn Nets, who in the neighborhood, and we've gotten a keen interest in following him, and we're actually traveling to hopefully Milwaukee this summer to go to where he plays, the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's a hobby and a passion of mine, and so that helps kind of balance out the rigor on a daily basis of what we go through. I mean, we all work very difficult work, difficult jobs, working from home, and to help maintain a kind of a work-life balance, that's something that kind of helps ground me overall. At the same time, we work-life balance is one perspective. We've almost integrated work and life together, right? I mean, working from home, working at all different hours. Dropping off the kids in school, picking up the kids from the bus, and we're going through that right now. And and incorporating, those passions and hobbies together with work has become, interesting. And I'm seeing that more and more now than ever.
Steve, this has been a fantastic interview. I want to thank you for coming on the program and providing some entertainment.
Yeah, I'm okay right now. It seems like you're doing it.
I'm in pain right now.
Okay,
I have to say.
All right. I think I for some reason the fifth one just hit me really hard. The sixth one I'm doing a little better, but I don't know why. But
I just put too much XXX on it. That's the issue. But wanted to thank you for coming by.
Great. Thank you for doing this. I'm looking forward to seeing this, and good luck to everybody at the IT Met Section conference. I mean, I think it's going to be a great conference. Looking forward to hearing more about it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Luigi. This has been great.